What will be the legacy of Harry and Meghan's return to the United Kingdom and the face-to-face meeting between King Charles and his grandchildren?
Only 5 minutes ago, the palace released the kind of update no parent ever wants to face. It was brief, carefully controlled, and almost completely stripped of detail. Yet within minutes, one royal appearance had been cancelled. Prince William's commitments were placed under review, and had been pulled into an urgent family briefing. At the center of it all was Prince Louis. Before we continue, this is a clearly fictional and dramatized royal narrative created for commentary and entertainment. It is not a verified medical report about any member of the royal family. According to this dramatized account, a sudden health concern had forced William and Catherine to change their plans without warning. Catherine immediately stepped away from public attention to remain close to her son. William refused to confirm whether he would attend an important engagement later that day, and palace staff received one unusual instruction: say as little as possible. The statement contained no diagnosis. It announced no emergency procedure. It did not claim Louis was facing a life-threatening condition. But sometimes the words a palace refuses to use create more concern than the ones it releases. Why had and been summoned so quickly? Why were several schedules changing at once? And why was William reportedly unwilling to leave Louis, even for a few hours? The palace could control the diary. It could manage the cameras. It could rewrite a statement 10 times before releasing it. But it could not completely hide the fear inside the family, because the detail that troubled William most never appeared in the public announcement. It was something Louis had quietly said while the adults around him were trying to appear calm. And when Princess Anne heard what those words were, she immediately understood that this was no longer simply a scheduling problem, and had not been called because she possessed any medical authority. She had been called because inside this dramatized story, she was the family member most trusted to keep the institution functioning while William and Catherine focused on their child. She understood the danger immediately. A young royal was involved. An appearance was already at risk. Reporters were watching the family calendar, and every unexplained cancellation could produce a headline more frightening than the actual situation. William made his position clear from the beginning. He wanted to remain with Louis. He would not leave simply to protect the appearance that everything was normal. That meant someone else needed to manage the machinery already moving outside the room. Postponed engagements, security teams, senior staff, prepared motorcades, and a palace communications office asking the same question again and again. What are we allowed to say? Anne's first instruction was direct. No premature statement. No speculative medical language, and no reference to Louis that William and Catherine had not personally approved. Catherine wanted the entire situation treated as a private family matter. She understood how quickly one vague phrase could be transformed into claims of hospitalization, surgery, or a serious diagnosis that had never been established, and agreed with her. But she also recognized the danger of complete silence. When one royal disappears, people notice. When two schedules change, reporters begin making connections. When 3 members of the family alter their plans at the same moment, silence no longer looks private. It looks deliberate. And opened the schedule and immediately found the problem. Louis had been expected to attend a family appearance that afternoon. It was not a major constitutional event. There were no state documents to sign. No foreign leaders were waiting. But the appearance mattered because the children were expected to be visible beside William and Catherine. Canceling it would protect Louis from attention. It would also tell the world that something had happened, and stared at the engagement for several seconds. Then she said what everyone in the room already understood. The moment Louis's name disappeared from that schedule, the palace would begin losing control of the story. The cancellation was issued quietly. No dramatic announcement. No explanation beyond the phrase, a private family matter. It was intended to reduce attention. Instead, it triggered it. Louis's name vanished from the appearance. William became unavailable for part of the day. Catherine remained out of public view. and princess and continued with selected duties while declining to answer questions about the Wales family. One absence might have been dismissed. Two could have been explained as coincidence. But three changes at once created a pattern. Reporters began assembling the pieces. Why had Louis been removed? Why was William reconsidering another commitment? Why was and suddenly handling responsibilities that had not originally belonged to her? Outside, speculation accelerated. Inside, the atmosphere became quieter. According to this dramatized narrative, Louis was being kept calm while medical professionals considered whether the concern would pass with rest or require additional observation. The adults around him avoided alarming language. Catherine stayed close. William repeatedly asked for clearer answers and moved between the family and the palace staff, trying to stop administrative pressure from entering the room. Then the first medical update arrived. William read it once. His expression remained controlled. He read it again, this time, and noticed the change. The message did not confirm the worst, but it did not provide the immediate reassurance William had been hoping for. The recommendation was cautious. Louis should rest. Travel should be postponed. Public appearances should be avoided. And his normal routine should not resume until the concern had fully passed. There was no confirmed major diagnosis. But there was also no firm timeline. William asked the question any parent would ask. How soon will he be back to normal? The answer was not dramatic. It was simply uncertain. Too early to say. Those 4 words changed the entire calculation. Catherine focused on making the room feel familiar. William wanted certainty the medical team could not yet give him. The palace wanted wording it could release. And wanted everyone to remember that a child's private concern was in danger of becoming a national spectacle. Rest and observation sounded simple, but the absence of a return date carried enormous pressure. Every canceled appearance would generate new questions. Every day William remained away could fuel another theory. And every attempt to reassure the public risked revealing more about Louis than his parents believed anyone had a right to know. Then another question arose. William was due at an important engagement. Senior officials were already waiting. Security arrangements were complete. The event had been publicly confirmed. If he attended, the appearance could reassure people that the family was not facing an emergency. If he canceled, it would intensify the very speculation he wanted to prevent. The advisors argued that he could appear briefly and return within hours. From the palace perspective, it was a practical compromise. From William's perspective, it was not that simple. Louis was unsettled. He did not fully understand why unfamiliar adults were discussing him in lowered voices. He could see that his mother was staying unusually close. He could see staff moving in and out. And he knew his father was being asked to leave. Catherine did not tell William what decision to make. She understood the importance of the engagement. But she also understood that Louis did not care about state responsibility, public confidence, or the image of continuity. He only knew that something unfamiliar was happening, and offered the solution no one else had been willing to propose. She would replace William. The engagement would continue. The monarchy would remain publicly visible, and William could stay where his son needed him. Officials warned that Anne's appearance would confirm something was wrong, and answered with a question. What exactly are we protecting, the child or the schedule? No one responded. William still hesitated, not because he wanted to leave, but because he understood what his absence might trigger. Then Louis looked directly at him. He did not ask what the doctors had said. He did not ask why the event had been canceled. He did not understand why advisors were waiting beyond the door. He asked one quiet question. Are you staying with me? For William, every argument ended there. Yes, he answered. I'm staying. That was the detail the first palace statement never revealed. To officials, the situation concerned schedules, headlines, and public confidence. To Louis, it concerned one thing. Whether his father would leave while he was frightened. William sat beside him and promised he was not going anywhere. Catherine gently explained that medical checks did not automatically mean something terrible had happened. The adults lowered their voices. Unnecessary staff were asked to leave. Discussions about public duties stopped whenever Louis could hear them. William then officially withdrew from the engagement and would attend in his place. The family problem had been temporarily solved. The communications problem had just become far worse. Within minutes, reporters would see and arriving where William had been expected. The palace needed an explanation before the substitution became the explanation. William issued 3 instructions. No dramatic wording, no unconfirmed claim, and no statement suggesting that the doctors knew more than they had actually said. But the communications team had already prepared a draft. It was short, formal, and intended to close the story quickly. Instead, one phrase almost caused a serious argument. The draft described the situation as a significant health concern involving Prince Louis. To the communications advisors, the phrase sounded measured. It acknowledged the cancellations. It justified William's absence. And it seemed serious enough to prevent accusations that the palace was deliberately misleading the public. William immediately rejected it. Significant health concern would become the headline. The remaining words would disappear. Within minutes, commentators could interpret it as a serious diagnosis. Others might claim hospitalization, emergency intervention, or deterioration that had never occurred. Catherine objected even more strongly. She wanted Louis's name removed completely. Once a child's private medical information enters the public record, she argued, it can never be fully withdrawn, and understood both positions. But she warned that silence also had consequences. The cancellations were public. William's absence was public. Her substitution would be public. If the palace offered nothing, the speculation might become more extreme than the reality. The room divided into 2 sides. Transparency versus privacy. Reassurance versus restraint. Institution versus family. William would not approve language that implied a diagnosis. Catherine would not allow Louis to become the subject of public medical analysis. The advisors insisted they needed something clear enough to explain the schedule, and looked at the draft again. Then she removed the disputed phrase. She replaced it with one sentence. The Prince and Princess of Wales are grateful for the public's understanding as they prioritize the well-being and privacy of their family. The atmosphere changed immediately. It did not reveal a diagnosis. It did not exaggerate the concern. It did not invite strangers into Louis's private circumstances. Instead, it reminded the public that behind the titles was a family trying to protect a child. William approved it. Catherine agreed on one condition. No further detail would be released without their direct permission. The final statement confirmed that William's schedule had changed because of a private family matter. It thanked the public for understanding, and it announced that selected engagements would continue with support from Princess Anne. There was no recovery timeline, no reference to emergency treatment, no claim that Louis faced a permanent condition. For several minutes, the family believed the controlled wording might settle the story. Then, the opposite happened. The statement spread faster than the cancellation itself. Commentators focused on what it did not say. Why had William withdrawn from an important appearance? Why had and replaced him so quickly? Why had the palace refused to say when Louis would return? And why had the words well-being and privacy been chosen instead of a routine scheduling explanation? The palace had prevented one alarming headline. It had created a dozen unanswered questions. Then a second development raised the stakes. Louis's schedule was cleared not only for that day, but for the days immediately following it. William reduced his travel. Family arrangements were adjusted. Additional privacy measures were introduced around the Wales household. Individually, each change was reasonable. Together, they created the impression that the family expected the disruption to continue. The public statement sounded temporary. The activity behind palace walls looked more serious. And before the communications team could respond, an inaccurate interpretation began spreading outside. Some observers assumed the household changes meant Louis had been moved elsewhere for treatment. Others suggested William's reduced travel indicated a hidden emergency. Neither claim had been confirmed inside this dramatized narrative. But the rumors placed William in a new dilemma. Would releasing more information protect Louis by stopping speculation? Or would it reward the speculation by giving the public access to details that should remain private? And advised patience. Catherine wanted no further statement. William agreed, but only after ordering staff to make one thing clear. No unverified medical description would be allowed to stand in official briefings. Inside the household, the changes were less dramatic than the rumor suggested. Meals continued at familiar times. The children were encouraged to follow their normal routines. Conversations about medical checks were kept away from rooms where Louis might overhear them. Visitors were limited. Travel was reconsidered, and William reduced anything that might take him far from home. Catherine tried to prevent Louis from believing the entire household had changed because of him. But children notice what adults attempt to conceal. George saw his father canceling duties. Charlotte noticed staff speaking more quietly. Both understood that something unusual was happening. Then George found something near the door. William's overnight bag. It had been prepared for the journey connected to the canceled engagement. But William had not left. George stared at the bag and then asked whether the change had anything to do with Louis. The question caught William off guard. He and Catherine had protected the children from the details. But in doing so, they had created an empty space that George and Charlotte were beginning to fill with their own fears. Charlotte was more direct. Is Louis going to be all right? William and Catherine realized silence was no longer reassuring them. It was frightening them. They explained that Louis needed rest and attention from medical professionals. They made clear that no serious diagnosis had been confirmed. And they told Louis something he needed to hear. None of the canceled plans were his fault. George became protective. He offered to remain nearby. Charlotte tried to distract Louis with familiar games and conversation. For a short time, the house stopped feeling like a royal residence responding to a public story. It became what it had been all along, a family comforting a worried child. William understood something important in that moment. Protecting children did not mean pretending nothing was happening. It meant giving them enough truth to feel secure without forcing them to carry adult fear. Then the second medical update arrived. This was the message everyone had been waiting for. It confirmed that Louis remained stable, comfortable, and supported by his family. There was no need for an emergency procedure. No major diagnosis had been established. The recommendation, however, remained cautious. He should continue resting. His routine should return gradually, and no public appearance should be promised until the family was certain he felt ready. William felt the tension ease, but he did not interpret reassurance as a command to return immediately to business as usual. Catherine refused to let a calmer update become pressure to place Louis back in public view, and supported her. A premature return date could turn recovery into another performance. The palace therefore prepared a second limited update. William would gradually resume selected responsibilities. His travel would remain reduced. Family arrangements would stay flexible. And Louis would return to public appearances only when his parents believed the time was right. For the public, this was the reassuring turn in the story. For William, it was also a warning. The family had come close to allowing the needs of the institution to influence a decision that belonged to parents and medical professionals. He made one final choice. From that point forward, the children's appearances would not be treated as automatic extensions of the royal calendar. There would be no fixed return date for Louis. No pressure to appear cheerful for cameras. No attempt to prove normality before the family actually felt it. William would return gradually and would continue helping where necessary. Catherine would focus on restoring stability for George, Charlotte, and Louis. The palace could rearrange engagements. It could replace one royal with another. It could issue carefully controlled statements. But it could not ask a frightened child to understand why public appearances mattered more than feeling safe. Behind every title is a person. Behind every palace announcement is a conversation the public never hears. And behind every controlled royal image may be a parent trying not to show fear. The family entered the day facing uncertainty. They ended it with cautious reassurance and a clearer boundary. Louis would return when he was ready, not when the headlines demanded it, not when the palace calendar required it, and not simply because public curiosity had become uncomfortable. Duty mattered. The institution mattered. But in that moment, a child came first. Do you believe William made the right decision by stepping away from his engagement to remain with Louis? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to Royal Latest Report for more royal commentary and clearly dramatized palace narratives. Because the next family appearance may reveal whether life has genuinely returned to normal, or whether William's new boundary has permanently changed how the royal children will be seen in public.